Bunnycast, episode number 8, recorded on April 11th, 2008. Today's topic, video games.
I thought you would like to read a night story. It's called The Tales of Calypso, Secrets of the Ocean Deep. Slowly, so slowly, the day turns into night. The darkness turns the life that lives in the ocean's depths below. Suddenly, and without warning, danger strikes. Octopus, octopus, your children are dying.
Warning, may contain obscure 90s references.
So long my tears. Now I can fly to heights that I never knew were there, and dream of the dreams that I want without a single care. 'Cause I'm not ashamed of this face. You vanquished my fears. You gave me the reason to be grace. So long my tears. You made me.
Welcome again to another episode of the Bunnycast. Killerfish will not be joining us today. He does extend his apologies. In his place we have Kyrio from the forums. Everybody should know Kyrio. He is the...
Kyrio, depending on your pronunciation of the name.
Kyrio,
It's
take it away. Yes, everybody will know him by his wonderful, wonderful Kirin. What is it? A demon race?
Corin.
Corin.
Yeah, it's a demon race.
Or pseudo-demon race, at least.
Well, yeah, something like that. It makes sense in the comic.
It all makes sense in the comic.
Let's talk a little bit about you, Kyrio, just to give our listeners who might not be familiar with your work a little introduction. Just give a brief bio of yourself, real quick.
Well, I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm just turned 19 this Monday, actually, and well, I like drawing. That's really all that's to know.
Well, okay. Let me ask you this: what was your inspiration for the Corin?
The Corin actually came from the idea of from the story. Actually, I just needed something to turn the main character into, so I just made it up on the spot, really. And I find out later that it's actually based off of a lot of different things I've seen before, such as like the Moogles from Final Fantasy, or the Dot Core from Inverloch by Sarah Elderton, stuff like that. Just a
So
mix
visually
of.
it's amalgamation.
Yes, I just drew the cutest thing I could possibly imagine, and that's what came out.
All
Okay.
with no Elvis in the as a reference.
I do have to ask you, why have we not yet seen a Dame Helennet version of Corin version?
Well, I don't believe you've ever asked me. Besides that, all the people in the coronation list that I have drawn, I actually opened up that just for something to do in my spare time, and after a while it just piled on so high that I couldn't do it anymore. So I kind of burned out right there.
Well, I'm still a little chapped that Squato got one, but Dame Helennet didn't.
Squato actually got 3.
I know. Okay, well, that's a little bit about.
And
Kyrio.
knowing you probably wanted to have, if there was a Dame Helennet, you probably would want at least one where the two of them are meant to be fighting because you got annoyed.
Me? Okay, let's move on to news. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on. Forums, not much happened in this last week.
There's been posts, there's been... Well, I don't know if it's posts. There's been... 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 There Dan saying stuff. There've been deletes. There's been the old.
Yeah, same old, same old. Nothing particularly noteworthy there, at least not.
Although I was going to make a small comment from last week's, which was when you were talking about that 3D forum idea. I know you brought up the point of Second Life, to which a few people there at least made the point of not wanting to have anything to do with it. Because at least one person made the point it's filled with furry porn. I should also point out it's also filled with human porn.
It's also filled with car dealerships and people putting their corporate headquarters online, and
which no one goes to.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that just about anybody can find objectionable to it. It's at this point, it's like the Bible. If you really look for something to
not as fun, not as fun, but possibly a little bit less begetting.
Maybe a little. But yeah, if you really want to find something to object to on Second Life, you're going to find it. But you're also going to find what you're really looking for. In any case, but yeah, that was. Thank you for the follow up on that, Squato. That was good of you to mention. In terms of comic news, a couple interesting.
It's updated.
Yes, it is updating. Also, there is going on Dan has made it available on Oh No Robot, which, for those unfamiliar with Oh No Robot, what they do is the author of a comic will make their comic available for transcription, which generates a text-searchable version of the comic and links back to, like, if you want to find, unfortunately, it's rather bare on the ground for Alguna Shai right now, but in the future, once more comics have been transcribed, if you want to find all comics with a reference to Reed or the Owl Will Eat You, then you just type in Owl Will Eat You in the search field, and it will link you directly to the comics.
Something which people have been asking for a while, and in fact, I can't think of the guy's name offhand, but there's one on the watch who actually created something very similar to that from scratch, actually, for the watch, actually offered to use his code and all that for anyone that wanted it for EGS. No one took him up on that offer. I don't know if that's still active. It might be offer, but they still use it.
Well, different strokes, I guess.
Yeah.
Another comic-related bit of news is Dan's DES Comics, the comic strip he does for his college newspaper, is up, and it is quite entertaining. It's got a lot of the same kind of humor that appeared in the earlier EGS comics, but it looks like he's trying to keep it a little more reality-grounded, less story-focused, kind of more of a gag-a-day comic strip.
Yep. Is this the first time you've been seeing this, or...?
No, this is the first time he's posted it in a single...
I know. I'm just sort of saying, have you been following it as it's been posted on DA?
I haven't been following it religiously. I know it's there, but he has now got a DS Comics spot on KeenSpot.
Well, he's had that site for, kidding me, 2 years now, and the most he really did with it beforehand was just a few a few images for this other comic idea he had, which doesn't look like anything resulted from, and also that image of Batman. Where they had, it was basically Batman and Wonder Woman were there. She's a bit cold they're in Antarctica, and he's saying, "I don't feel the cold. I'm Batman." And he just all of a sudden turns down to this penguin and goes, "Penguin."
I vaguely recall that. But no, I'm talking about he's posting these as basically similar format to the El Gunashad comic itself, with the archives and the first, previous, so on and so forth buttons. Readable archive format instead of having to navigate to each individual comic on like DA or something like that. And it looks like the DES comics page is now dedicated to just this comic. And this is a brand new change that he's only introducing this last week. So that's why it's news and not just, he's done this old stuff.
he's going to ramp that page 2 in time from what he looks like. Because it's very, very basic.
It works. Okay, so that's comic news. Miscellaneous news.
Actually, I'd say with the comic news that I'm actually interested in how things are going, and I know I'm sort of the one that goes with, oh, it's Dan making another one of these noises about doing this, but from what I'm seeing so far, I actually am interested in seeing I actually feel a bit of hope that the comic's going to get back on track and go well. I'm a bit that's my optimistic side coming out. I've sort of got a pessimistic side saying, no, it's all going to fail again. Not wanting to listen to that at this stage. Please, Dan, don't make it go back to that old stage.
Well, as long as he keeps coming back to it, it means it's not dead. I mean, it's like Sparkling Generation Valkyrie Yuki. That comic will take breaks for months at a time. I mean, at one point, almost 9 months it went by between updates?
Over 12 months at one stage, wasn't it?
12 months? I thought it was 9. But in any case, yeah, I mean, you get the point. It was a really, really long hiatus, without even any news updates, really. And then she picked it up, and we're back to about once a month or once every 2 months. So, yeah. Okay, you got 5 minutes for miscellaneous news.
Miscellaneous stuff. Well, I know the torch relay's been going over in the US. Had some fun there. A little bit of fun, actually.
Yes.
Nothing major.
If by fun you mean the idiots who decide that a week can't go by without protesting something are out in force, yeah, we do have a bit of something. For those who have not been watching the news, the Olympic torch run through the city of San Francisco had to be rerouted and significantly shortened thanks to a bunch of idiots deciding that they were going to protest the Olympics because of China's policies. Forget the fact
Primarily
that
Tibet.
I'm sorry?
Primarily towards Tibet.
Right. Forget the fact that there's other better ways to protest China's involvement, all of which involve that evil, evil thing called capitalism. No, they're instead going to openly insult a bunch of the best athletes from around the world by forcing them to either foreshorten or cut out entire sections of a ceremony that has absolutely nothing to do with China or its policies. Yeah, good job, guys. Good job! You can tell I'm really enthused about this.
Yeah, I'm annoyed that they're using this because it's using this in the wrong way, and it's like the whole... There's a point where you've got to go, the Olympics are meant to be above politics. That's partly why they went to China. Yes, they were. When they picked China, they were well aware of the history of what China has towards, say, Tiananmen Square, which you cannot search in China, or things like, well, that particular incident, and things like that. But they're doing it because it's the exact same thinking for when they had the Moscow Games. Sort of an olive branch out so that people can actually see other sides of these countries.
Yeah. And, I mean, for heaven's sake, the first television broadcast of the Olympic Games was Nazi Germany's Olympic Games. I mean, come on. Yeah, it's patently ridiculous. Of course, we are...
should be making it fair. Germany had previously won the rights to the Olympics before the Nazis came to power.
Well,
but they really staged it up.
Yeah. It doesn't change the fact that it was broadcast right under Hitler's nose from Nazi Germany, and I mean that was the first time a black man won the 100 meter or something like that. I can't remember which Soviet one it was.
Hitler's personal Zeppelin, wasn't it?
We are of course talking about the same community that decided to give the shrieking idiots, I mean the Code Pink morons, I mean the Code Pink ladies, their own personal parking space, just so that they could protest once a week in front of the Marine Recruitment Office in Berkeley. These are a bunch of morons. Okay.
It just made me think, wasn't there an incident a couple of months, 1 or 2 months back, where someone tried to plant a bomb or something like that in one of the recruiting stations?
You're striking a bell in my head, but I can't recall offhand.
When I heard that, I'm thinking, oh, we're going back to that type of stuff nowadays, are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 60s all over again.
Indeed. Okay.
Mostly why I made that point is we have people from the forums, particularly Moom, who live in in and around San Francisco. From what I've been able to get from the ones, they all seem to be fine, or if not, had nothing to do with the protests, if at all heard about it.
Yeah, I can't imagine any of the bunnies taking part in this kind of thing, and if they did, I
can think of a few offhand.
Yeah, well, you keep that thought to yourself.
Yes, I'm not naming names.
I'm in my idyllic little world. La la la. Alrighty.
Other miscellaneous news, I talked about this with Homer just beforehand. He felt it was interesting enough. There's something which the New South Wales Police Force are going to come up with, and that is what they refer to it as their own version of YouTube, which is you say you see a crime, you've got a camera phone with you, you record that on the phone, and you just upload the footage of that onto this police website, and they can then use that to investigate crimes. These videos themselves are not actually broadcast.
So, they're not available in general on the net? Is that what you're saying?
No, they're just there for people to, like the police, if they are to be investigated.
Yeah, I don't see the point.
It's basically because as they point out, there's a large increase in people having phones, things like that. They capture a lot of data which can be relevant to police force. For example, look at the London bombings. Most of the footage from that came from people that were there.
Right. But
and you also see the rise of YouTube. It's like people dumb enough to actually put their crimes up on YouTube.
Yeah. What I'm saying is I just don't see the point of having a site like that that's not open and available to the public. Of course,
it's open for people to upload, but it's not open in the sense that you get to whatever video that's put on there is free for people, free for other people to view. But that's as far as I'm aware. Which I feel is a bit of a mistake for them to actually just put it on there. It's like, oh, look at this crime. Ooh, look at this crime. Oh, look, that person's got killed or whatever.
Well, I guess the American full disclosure mentality would say that that would have to be available to as many parties as possible, privacy permitting. So, in any case.
Yeah, I feel it's a bit better just to sort of leave it off like that. If they want to release it, they release it, whatever. See what happens. But one of the things that's actually become a bit of a point is some of the civil liberty people are saying it's a bit questionable tactic to use a website like in this manner, particularly because for it to really work, you can't be anonymous. You have to give your name, your address, all that. And this is in case that if you capture something of note, they use it and they have to get called in to give a statement.
Right.
Or if it's false and they go, you're wasting police resources, whatever. Oh yeah, that brings up one little point. The other day we had two guys walking past my place. This is actually a warning to everyone, especially in terms of keeping your data. These guys were rummaging through the bins, and they appeared to be collecting letters and other assorted mail, particularly anything which might be from banks.
That's why you tend to shred those.
Yeah. That's actually becoming standard practice in a lot of places. So, okay. Well, let's move on to discussion.
And warning: be careful with those. Yeah, if you don't already do something.
Let's move on to discussion here. Again, our topic today is video games, and let's talk about exactly why we wanted to talk about video games.
Because we can.
Well, that too. Squato, didn't you say that Kairio was working on doing some video games?
Well, he's claimed in the past, at least, that he has worked on some computer games in the past some type of development, things like that. Like basically, he's just made some games, or at least work with teams, things like that. So, game-wise, he actually has an idea how they're made.
Okay, Kyrie, why don't you comment on that a little bit?
Well, nothing I've really made has been complete because it was just me doing it alone, working with really simple programs and stuff. But I'm actually working with a partner who lives in New York right now on a full-scale RPG series that is honestly not getting anywhere because we don't have the resources to get it done, but we like to just talk about it and how things would work. And basically, we go into such deep discussions about how the systems will function that we could probably make it from scratch had we enough time and manpower.
Gee, I don't know anything about doing something with a team member and not having enough time or manpower. War threat! Okay, let's talk a little bit about video games. Are we going to talk about classic games? What are we going to do here?
Broad shot, maybe? Pulls that shotgun. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I am a self-proclaimed Zelda freak, if that's any help.
Okay, what defines a Zelda freak?
Well, what I define as a Zelda freak is me. Honestly, it's just a fan of Zelda and everything about it. And just going into the storylines and stuff like that. Realizing that things are connected, and though the games may be similar, to use a tame word.
Oh, I discovered the Xerox machine.
There is a connectivity between each story, and it creates a really interesting cycle of good versus evil and all that sort of thing.
Why are they all named Zelda and all named Link?
Well, Zelda is named Zelda because of a decree that the king made in Zelda 2 after he accidentally, or something like that, put his daughter to sleep for eternity. And he said, from now on, all the princesses of Hyrule will be named Zelda.
Uh-huh.
Link is named Link because Shigeru Miyamoto thought it would be a link to the player. Basically, he wants the player to be inserting themselves into Link. There's no storyline reason why he's named Link.
What was that, Squato?
Yes, I have. I said including people using names, things like fuck you, things like that.
Uh-huh.
It's also the reason why he doesn't talk.
Right.
Yes, because fuck's going to be saying a lot of words, aren't they?
Squato, your connection is fuzzing just a little bit.
Yeah.
I can hear it in the back, reverting back to me from someone.
Yeah, I think that's just digital echo.
Better?
Yes.
Better? Oh, no, okay for me, so good.
Okay.
Keep going, keep going.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what kind of games we like to play. I'll start it off. I am admittedly a first-person shooter fan, but I also really like the Final Fantasy series. The same way Kyrio is a fan of Zelda, I'm a fan of the Final Fantasy series, in that I see just about every single video role-playing game in existence as some sort of derivative of Final Fantasy. So, I mean, come on,
Except
you can
for
see it all over the place.
What about Pong?
That's not a fantasy role-playing game.
No, but it came from before Final Fantasy, and it's a video game. You're saying that all video games came from
No.
Pong?
All fantasy role-playing
Sorry.
games.
Going from what you said. You said general games. Sorry,
No.
I got distracted by something being handed to me.
And
According to the notes, the person that owns the blue Honda Civic, you've left your lights on.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Number plate's 1224.
It's too short for an American plate. Kyrio, why don't you tell us a little bit about your video gaming experience aside from Legend of Zelda?
Well, mostly I'm a Nintendo fanboy, so I obviously play the Mario and Metroids a lot, and my first system was actually the original Nintendo Entertainment System. I was like 3 when I got it. And
God, I feel old.
yeah, seriously. I've actually had somebody, like a 12-year-old or so, actually ask me what a Super Nintendo was. And that just blew my mind.
Yeah,
honestly.
I know that feeling.
And I used to think that I was like, I don't know, a kid still.
You're getting old.
I'm a geezer.
Okay, Squato.
19.
Raise already.
But yeah, I'm also a major Final Fantasy fan. I like the RPGs, and basically anything that tells a story can get me hooked.
Okay, Squato, how about yourself?
Probably a bit more broad than you guys. Like, I really got into. Like, I was a really big fan for game. Oh, sorry, I should say my first real gaming experience would have been some of these old toys. I can't remember the name of. Like, but they were basically flashing light arcade type things, which people could own at home, and these were from the 80s.
Atari? ColecoVision?
No, things, not them, but sort of related in different sense. It was not until the first real gaming system was actually the NES. And apparently I was quite good at it, even though I never played it because my brother never allowed me. Although I helped everyone else that he played against because I told them where to go. That's what 4-year-old brothers are good for.
Indeed.
Played that for a while when I was actually able to. First got my first gaming the actual gaming system I was able to get was the NES with Diddy Kong Race, the first game for that. Still a good game, if flawed. Got the 64 systems, GameCube. More or less, I've been playing a bit more with the Nintendo stuff, but I've been getting a few of the. I've got the Xbox. Probably going to get the Xbox 360 at some point. But also been doing a lot of PC game-wise. Zelda's, some of the Mario stuff. Always been a fan of those. But also first-person shooters, real-time strategy games, and also Civilization type games.
Civilization type games. We'll call them God games because that's kind of what the genre.
I define God games more along the lines of things like Sims as opposed to, say, Civilization, where you're more or less the leader type thing. It's similar in that sense because you're free roaming and you're allowed to do whatever you want, but difference in the sense of what you actually can do.
Well, it still falls under the classification because, I mean, honestly, let's take a look at it. You're living for literally thousands of years. You have absolute control over the entire thing. And not only that, you get to say, you are going to develop the ability to use electricity, and it happens. So it really is a God game, but it's probably one of the best God games still, bar none.
Yeah. And they're always dynamic when they do things. Also, and very funny when some of the elements they put into it are perceived by people. For example, I know some people really, really, really hated it when they added in religions into Civilization. Because that was offensive to them. While other ones just liked it, loved the idea completely.
Well, guess what? It's a part of history.
Suck on that! Of course, it was a controversial bit they've had before that was, hey, this one doesn't recognise slavery. Well, this one does. And this one says it's a good thing.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about the kinds of things that we're paying attention to these days. I don't think any podcast talking about video games today would be complete unless they mentioned the Zero Punctuation videocast hosted by the Escapist magazine in Australia.
And I'm laughing at you guys for all that because it's taken you this long to find out about him.
Oh no, I found out about him a little, some time ago, almost right after he got hooked in by the Escapist. This is just the first time I've mentioned it.
Yeah.
I actually found his first video on YouTube. I'm not sure if it was when he posted it, but it's the first video I saw of him.
I don't think it was one he posted because I think they're all meant to be exclusively posted on, zero punctuation.
No,
the website.
There's one or two that are actually on YouTube that he released before the Escapist magazine picked him up as a regular editor. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
One was on the Darkness, I believe.
Yeah.
Not
That's
a
the
bad
one I
game.
saw.
Not a bad game.
And not according to Yahtzee.
I know the points he's saying, but what I say not a bad game is the way it actually can draw you into the world and doing things like and this is spoilerific for those who haven't played it. The fact that one of the early things you were able to sit there with your girlfriend or the character that's your girlfriend, and you can basically just spend time with her instead of building a relationship with her, as opposed to just going out and doing things.
So it's a relationship sim.
A little bit, but it's actually quite interesting.
And you get these dark tentacles. Gee, I don't know where this could go.
The bit where I was going to say, why that was interesting is how they actually, to help set the mood, is they actually put in full movies and full episodes for TV shows. Like, as what you could do with your girlfriend is watch these movies.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because that's totally what I want to do when I play a video game, is watch TV.
It draws you into the world. That's why I like it. As opposed to, this person you never cared about it before has actually been kidnapped and is about to die. Do something about it.
Well, that does kind of bring up an interesting point. And there's a website I saw a few months ago that actually talked about one of the reasons that BioShock was so popular was because it addressed the issue of, well, why are you doing this kind of stuff? Because somebody said that this is the thing to do. They brought up the example of Halo. Well, Cortana says, go bitch slap these aliens. You go bitch slap the aliens, but you don't know why. I mean, they do kind of give you the impression that the ship is under siege and they're at war with the humans, but you don't know. I mean, heavens, are the humans really on the good guy side? We don't know. Yeah. So, something to keep in mind about that.
Yeah, I know what your points are. Like, it's ways of drawing people into the worlds more than just, running around and doing things, and getting a bit more idea of the importance of the mythology of stuff and what you're really doing is of any importance, as opposed to you're just meant to be the most important person in the universe which everything is to follow about and all that type of crap.
Yeah. And I actually do really like that. In fact, that's one of the reasons I preferred for the longest time role-playing games over any other type of games, because the good role-playing game, again, I'm thinking of some Final Fantasy, especially Final Fantasy VI, really spent a lot of time developing the characters, the environment, the story, giving you everything that you needed to know to say, okay, you know what? Yes, you are fighting the good fight, and here's why. So, Cario, you've been relatively quiet.
Hey, you guys have a nice discussion going. Why should I interrupt? Honestly, I don't talk a lot, so I really can't input anything.
We haven't tied him up yet, everyone, so you haven't been forced to talk.
Yeah, I'm a pretty backgroundish kind of person.
So you're that non-player character that sits in the bar and sighs and says, "Life is hard."
Welcome to Corneria.
A nation filled with wallpaper sitters, whatever it's pronounced.
Hi, you seem like an adventurer. Do this for me.
Yeah.
I'll give you money.
There's rats. Kill them.
You can't just
This is
walk
my-
into somebody's house and interrupt them and take their stuff. Sure, I can. That actually goes back to the Ultima series, which
Yeah.
Yeah.
the Ultima series is starting to fade into obscurity, which is really sad because they did set the bar, especially on the PC gaming side.
True, but on another sense, it's sort of a good thing because it's a lot of the reason. Part of the reason for that is just a lot of the things which the game was doing for and what it stood for, somewhat becoming irrelevant nowadays as people and tastes and technology move away from those type of things. And another thing is because Lord British really hasn't been doing anything with the game for a while, so
Well, he lost the rights to it.
yeah.
So yeah, you can't do anything with the game unless somebody happens to give him the rights to the game back. So
He hadn't done anything for a while anyway in the first place.
yeah, Ultima Online, he had a little involvement with that, but yeah, even his involvement with that went to the wayside. But
And Tabula Rasa, whatever he gets pronounced as,
Tabula Rasa.
yeah, that's not particularly great.
Yes.
Just ask Yahtzee.
Yep.
But
No big fans of it, but it's crap.
the thing about the Ultima series, especially starting with Ultima 4, is it said, you know what, the game's not necessarily about defeating the big bad. I mean, there was bad guys to defeat and there was monsters to kill and all that kind of stuff. But with Ultima 4, it was all about developing this. All right, you're a hero, so what makes you heroic? Going around killing stuff? That's not particularly heroic. Anybody can do that. Any common thug can go around killing stuff. It was the idea behind Ultima 4 was it said, okay, if you want to be a hero, you have to behave in a hero fashion. And I mean, even from the get-go on that game, it said, okay, we have some questions to ask you. This is the kind of person that you're going to start as based on your responses to these questions. And of course, if you really wanted to figure out the best ways to play as, say, a paladin or a thief or whatever, there were guides that eventually showed up that said, answer the questions in this way in order to get this character. But if you answered the questions based on how you really felt, the character that you played in the game was very close to what you would actually be if you had just been dropped into the setting of Ultima. So
That sort of system still used nowadays with some effect by some companies and things like that, particularly when it comes to making a bit more randomized as to whether or not the person's male or female, although it sort of defeats the point when they say, are you male or female, when they've got all these random points coming up to defining a character, and it's just, are you male or female? Okay, you've just made sure the person's the exact same thing either way.
yeah.
Sorry,
The
just
most
a little
recent,
annoyance I have with those.
Go ahead, Kyrio.
The most recent game that I've played that uses a system like that to help choose your character would be the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game on the Game Boy Advance and DS. It's a pretty old game now. Honestly,
Well, in America at least, it's an old game.
yeah. It asks you a bunch of questions, and depending on what you answered and whether you are a male or female, it used the questions in a different way to set the Pokemon that you would play as.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I might be interested in giving that a go. Of course, I'd have to convince my wife to let me use her DS for a little bit, but
Just go, I pay for the rent.
I actually have 3DS.
oh,
Well, aren't you special?
Well, one's broken, one's my sister's, and my other one's new.
Again, aren't you special?
You want to know what else I've got?
sure, go for it.
Well, let's see. Let me turn around here. Let's see. We've got the original NES, the Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis with the Sega CD hookup into it, and let's see, PlayStation 1, PS2, GameCube. Did I say that already? Probably. I've got a Wii and a PlayStation 3 in the front room.
But how many games do you have on each system?
More than 10 at least. I know my Super Nintendo and Sega library put together has 120 something games.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very, very
Bad.
good. Well,
Any obscure ones?
Excuse me?
any obscure ones?
Any obscure ones?
I'm not sure. I do have original Chrono Trigger on the SNES. It's in Japanese. I don't understand what it's saying. But yeah, I got that from the 5 years I spent in Japan.
Wow, you spent 5 years in Japan already?
And he's
Yeah.
not a freak.
You're only 19. It's not fair.
My dad was in the Air Force. He was stationed there
Oh, gotcha.
for 5 years, yeah.
You spent
I
5
was-
years there and you don't understand the game?
No, we didn't learn a whole lot of the language.
Ah.
We stayed mostly in Okinawa, which is an Air Force base there, so surrounded by lots of American people most of the time.
And a lot of the Japanese there would already speak
English,
generally
yeah.
good English anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they're not pissed off at Americans, that is.
Okay, let's do some quick recapping of the video game systems that, Squato and I own in interest of fair time. And then we'll go on to listener Q&A. I'll go ahead and start.
Actually, there was one little point with gaming I was going to sort of bring up, the propaganda thing, just sort of see what you guys feel. But we'll do this first. So.
Yes. I've got a Xbox, original Xbox, a PlayStation 3, a GameCube. My wife has a DS. We've got a Game Boy Advance and Game Boy game adapter for the GameCube. So we get to play our Game Boy games on that. And that's
Which she loves, as far as I understand.
That's about all I've got, honestly. Yeah, I'm kind of falling behind on that. Of course, part of the problem is for the most of my gaming career, I was a PC gamer, especially getting into like the flight combat sims. So, yeah, that's my.
He liked to crash things and blow things up.
I didn't like to crash things. I did like to blow things up.
Who doesn't?
Okay, go ahead, Squato.
Gaming is violent. Game systems for me, like I said, original NES, which unfortunately I do not have anymore because that was taken away to a family location we have down the coast, and it was transferred there. I don't know how well it's gone for over the last few years, but I'm sure the salt will not be going well for it because it's near the beach. And you're not getting any details about that. That's why I'm trying to be vague on that little point there. Other systems though, Nintendo 64, GameCube, the Wii, original Xbox with a number of games on each system, PC, Advance, and the DS, as well as a few obscure ones here and there.
As far as propaganda in video games, for me, it's like, what's new? I mean,
Yeah.
that's always happened.
Well, the reason why I'm saying I brought it up is because you made me remember an article from the magazine called Hyper, which Yahtzee has worked with even along for years before he even did the videos, and everyone else sort of got noticed, was starting to notice him. And the article itself is basically talking about how video games, especially modern video games, can either be perceived to be in some way propaganda value with them, or some groups are using them for their own purposes. For example, they have points they make towards Under Siege, which it's a game from Palestine, where the point is you're a Palestinian running around and killing Israelis. It's meant to be like
and
based on
probably
the
with as much
Counter-Strike.
historical accuracy as everything that comes out of Palestine these days. So, yeah, It's the same thing of like all of the cartoons in World War II era that came out of Hollywood were in some way talking about how you need to be patriotic about this, you need to do that, or else you're siding with the enemy, all that kind of stuff. It's like, you know what? Whatever the propaganda is reflects the time and the culture, especially the attitudes of the people who made it, or commissioned its making, depending on exactly who you're talking about. So it's like, so what? It's been happening in entertainment for years. It's gonna continue happening, and if we try to stop it, then we're kind of getting into muddy waters. So
yeah.
Because
for
me, it's a non-issue. It's like, I'm going to play Final Fantasy even though it has heavy-duty overtones of adults are bad, corporations are bad, government is bad, and the only way to be a hero is to be under the age of 19, carry around a big
and a pretty boy.
Be a pretty boy and carry around a gigantic phallic symbol. So
yeah. Electric Company, worst enemy ever.
Okay.
No, but there was a few little points with this, not to be interrupting and rude, but one of the other points in counting to that Under Siege, and also you got the so-called Night of Bush I think it's called Night of Bush Capturing, which is not too hard to work out what it's about, meant to be from Al-Qaeda. You've also got, on the other hand, you've got American Army, which they do point out has propaganda value for two reasons. It allows people to play as the US Army. It's free to, and you can play it anywhere in the world, and it's also free. So it's a recruiting tool for Americans, and for American enemies, it's a case of, this is what we can do to you.
I just wonder when they're going to come out with America's Air Force. I mean, that's where
America's Navy.
You've got to polish this battle cannon for 4 hours. Get to it.
See, you are doing your part.
Yeah. But
you don't get to blow anything up. You also have a few other things, particularly some childlike game from Palestine, which is sort of match these symbols up to get whatever you want. It's meant to be a kids thing, but it's a little bit controversial because it has you at one mission bombing something in Israel. It doesn't really, synagogue with. It sort of looks like a synagogue, but it doesn't actually say what it is. Sorry.
Right. Well,
there's also a few Nazi games, and there's also the little comment here about Left Behind, or the Left Behind series.
Yeah. That started out interesting enough, but that really got weird. I mean, really weird. I mean, the kind of weird where if you're sitting down in church next to somebody who likes the series, you kind of look at them like, okay, you be over there and I'll love you in a Christian way.
They had a vote for the best book series or best books on the Watch. For some reason, I think it was number 4 for the best books, and some of the people are like, oh my god, Left Behind, yes, and everyone's like, this is the worst sin against American literacy ever. And that's from diehard Christians too.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was one. The other final game they sort of said is that not all games are about propagandist value of destroying everything. They had one from Palestine called Peacemaker, where you're actually meant to be you can either be in charge of Israel or in charge of Palestine, and you're meant to sort of build up. It's sort of like what you referred to before as the God game, but in this sense, you're a leader of the country, and you're meant to sort of build things for the country to help your people, but you're also meant to be able to protect yourselves. But and everything you do is sort of balanced against two things. It's balanced against, well, actually 3 things. It's balanced against your internal view and the internal support you have, how your relations are against your neighbour, either being Israel or Palestine, and what the general international views are towards your towards your actions. It's meant to be an excessively steep game to play, but it does show that there is ways that peace can be achieved in there, in that region. And it also shows how easy it is to stuff things up.
That alone would probably make it worth it. I think that alone should make it required playing in every school in America, because everybody here in America is all, oh, well, it's simple. You do this, you do that, you do the other. And it's like, no, it's not. It is not that simple. It's going to be a hellhole no matter what you do. In fact, here, try it.
And it also makes out the point of why I say the tactic of using people strapped with bombs isn't such a bad thing to do for the Palestinians, because as it's generally sort of made in the point there is, that's practically the only weapon they have, especially considering the fact their enemy has every control over every single type of weapon system you can think of, and has superior forces in every way you can think of. They have air superiority, they have ground superiority, they have tanks, which Palestinians don't. They have highly trained forces, which, yes, Palestinians somewhat do have. So, yeah, it's sort of a case of it's not a good tactic, but it works.
I suppose if your target is women and children, which... Okay, we're tangenting seriously hardcore, and we've got to keep this short. So,
yeah. Well,
okay, let's go on to some reader questions. We're not going to be able to do as many of them as we usually do, but... And Kyrio, feel free to chime in. You're taking Killerfish's place in this. I've got both the main forum and the Mayhem forums questions up on my screen here. So,
okay.
Let's do this. I'll just read the questions. This one's funny. You guys ever thought about hosting a guest speaker bunny? I don't know.
No.
Kyrio, what do you think?
I have never
No,
considered
Killerfish,
that.
what do you think, Killerfish? You're the Killerfish. What do you think, Killerfish, should we?
Anyways. Damn
it! Stuffed up. Hey, you suck!
Okay. Let's see. There is a question. It's kind of an older one, but I did want to address it. What did you think of all the crossover awards as they applied to the bunnies? And they mentioned specific threads like Invasion Alert, Fort Mayhem. Do you even care? So on and so forth. For me, my one major disappointment was I wanted to do something, and Killerfish and I had made plans last Comic-Con to do a sort of a big announcement, and I was going to bring in a few other bunnies to participate. And then Killerfish dropped off the face of the planet for a while. The entire rest of the time, the invasion was taking place. And so all those plans just completely fell through.
Well, that might be useful if there's, say, another war, not hitting anything there.
So, yeah, that something to bring up with Killerfish for a later date, I guess. I will say it's interesting that the Evil Overlords United comic started out with the intention of touching on all these different comics, and then the instant it hit the Watch and Bunny forums, those forums kind of just took over EOU, and
it actually is not too wrong for what happened, because they never planned that. They were just sort of thinking, oh, we'll have some comics, we'll just sort of do this. But then when people just started reacting to what was being shown there, and it was just this offhand comment for the offhand reference to EGS, and all of a sudden they went, okay, here's an entire different area we never perceived to be playing with. So they just decided, let's interact with the people on this level.
Yeah. And it actually...
And that's where it became interesting with the so-called webcomic awareness point.
Yeah. It made it very interesting. I think it was a fun diversion, and certainly something that I would love to participate in the future. Kyria, did you have any real involvement with that?
No, I didn't. I actually didn't pay much attention to it. I don't remember what I was doing, but I wasn't very active around that time.
Well, and Squato, I know you were like super central to the whole thing.
In the end it sort of came to that point. At first I was like, oh, okay, that's that. But time I sort of got, things were coming around with it and became a bit interesting until ultimately in the end, Anki, he sort of talked me about some of the things associated with, and from there that led to me getting involved with it until ultimately the stage I was in there, which was, yes, actually in central planning stages. Which was interesting. Yes, there was mistakes made from all sides. Like, I did make mistakes with planning things I felt should have gone well, and at the same time I ran into problems which I feel others, especially the forums, really badly reacted to. And I'm not just talking about the death threats I received. Yes, I did receive death threats.
Jeez.
Things like that. There was... one of the points I was going to make was when you talked about the watch from last time, that was something it was planning for, because, when I was going, hey, we could bring both forms in here, we could have a bit of peace, even though there was just whatever lingering anger that might have been around can be just dealt with. And boy, did that go badly when both sides sort of started to talk to each other. Because
I don't...
basically you have the most immature people dealing with the most immature people, and especially when they're RPing together. So it went from... This was actually the short version. Watchers pop in. EGS people pull guns out. Watchers, hey, we're watchers. EGS people, prove it. Watchers, we shouldn't prove it. Pull out weapons and attack. EGS people, that's not fair. You're god moding. You killed everyone. You're god moding. Watchers, well, you should be dealing better. We're not god moding. You're too weak to understand how to fight back.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
I was just shaking my head in the corner when I saw all that crap happen. Like, all that work, which we've worked on for literally months, and you just threw it away, especially due to the fact that some of these people doing that, yes, had given points about what they really wanted to have happen, and they... Ugh.
Yes, and number one rule of games mastering, never let the players roleplay their characters' meeting. Ever.
Actually, that was the intention, was to sort of show it in the comic and people go from there, but watch us jump to the point, because it was more fun to them.
Yeah,
they realised the mistake later.
Like I said, never ever let the players RP their characters' meeting. Ever. Period. It's a canonical rule at this point. If you that's a newbie GM mistake to let them roleplay their own meeting. You just don't do it.
Well, probably, to tell you the truth, I'll sort of make the point here, and just for the listeners, we might at one point get Hogan in, because he was the guy that actually was the big planner for everything. He basically came up with the idea for the crossover wars months ago, really. Oh, sorry, years ago. Sorry, yeah.
Years at this point.
Actually, they came up with it about 2005, I believe. He actually is interested in having a chat one of these days. Come and we'll bring him in, and he can talk about the stuff, what he saw, how he planned it, all this top stuff. And yes, he actually does intend to do a one-on-one with all the points people have about what went wrong with the crossover wars.
Kind of like what we're planning to do with the war thread?
Different level, different thing. This probably might be more successful as opposed to the war thread thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it ended successfully. That's the major difference.
Some points, yes. So, but yes, if anyone would like to have any questions that they'd like to pose to him, I don't know when we'll do it, but we'll bring him in one of these days and he'll answer it. His point is that, yes, if you do want to fight, he will fight back, because he comes from the Netherlands, which is the country which published those Muhammad cartoons.
Rock on. Yes, you can probably figure out where I stand on that particular issue. It's not that they're of Muhammad, it's that they're exercising their free speech rights. Okay, moving on to the next question. Let's see. Long-time reader of EGS, but this is from Broken Hero. I'm a long-time reader of EGS, but I recently got on the forums, gotten used to annoying people on the main EGS forums with my stubborn refusal to let go of my own theories until they're disproved, but I've been eyeing the Mayhem forum more and more lately. For some reason,
I can see why we've been having the little fight controversies of late then.
for some reason, RPing seems attractive to me, Joe. And
Note to all, please stop cutting that down with the still fight. Threads are turning into fight fest like crazy. We want that to stop. That's been your public service announcement.
For some reason, RPing seems attractive to me, and I was wondering if you had any tips on how to break on through to the other side. I've never done any role-playing outside of Japanese role-playing game consoles. What's this GURPS I keep hearing about? Is there math involved? Is there a way to RP and avoid math? If not, I'll content myself with writing little novelizations of Elguna Shive and the bastardized versions along with the original character. Thanks, and again, that was Broken Hero. I actually want to start out on the answer to this one. This particular question really interested me. First off, just a little bit of trivium. GURPS is an acronym for Generic Universal Role-Playing System. It was invented in America by a group of people that wanted to create a single unified game base of rules which they could apply to any setting. So for that setting, yes, there's a lot of math involved because you have to be able to determine in the same game system whether or not, say, magically generated fireball is going to do significant damage to a 30-foot tall mecha. There's also another
Irregular webcomic references that quite a fair bit.
What?
That type of gaming system.
Yes, Irregular Webcomics uses that. I do note that, again, this guy's talking about using JRPGs most of his life, and for a lot of American people, JRPGs is really their first exposure to role-playing games. I will say this, that JRPGs really are not role-playing games. They're linear things where you kind of select which battle attributes that your characters can have. A genuine role-playing game, you have lots and lots of options where you can do this, that, or the other, and most often...
Like Fireball?
I'm sorry?
Like Fireball?
Unfortunately, Fireball seems to be a very common and overused solution. Put that in air quotes. But genuine role-playing is generally done around a tabletop with a bunch of people talking about what it is that they're doing. And the reason it's done like that is because it's very hard for a video gamer to say, I mean, it's the invisible wall problem. Or, heck, the jumping problem in the Final Fantasy games. 7 is notorious for this. You've got a character that's walking around this junkyard, say, and you might want to explore off in this other direction. Well, as a human being, you could easily climb over the rubble and rubbish to explore off in that direction, but in Final Fantasy VII, in order to keep the player from going off in that direction, which they made no plans for, they put an invisible wall there. And so it turns it into a rail game. You're going exactly where they want you to go. If you try to deviate from that, they've got invisible walls, barriers, difficulty curves that keep you from going in that direction, whereas in a genuine role-playing game, I mean, hell, I was playing a level 1 bard thrown in with a bunch of like level 15 to 20 warriors and magicians, and I came out as one of the characters in the game that was considered to be the best played, best role played, best stats boost as a result of the game. I mean, I came out smelling like roses, and I was playing a level 1 character amongst this ridiculously hugely overpowered adventure for the character. And you cannot do that in a video role playing game of any kind. Now, as to the RPs that we do on the forums, especially the Mayhem forums, they're a lot closer to the tabletop gaming, like using GURPS or Dungeons and Dragons or Rifts or any of those others.
That's in those particular the ones that sort of seem to be more structured as opposed to the just random freeform type RPs. I should make that little point here.
I have no idea how what you said just relates to what I said.
Freeform are the ones which basically anything goes, is one way of putting it.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is
Mossy
that
Knoll's a classic example of that.
well, you're getting into you're not talking about mechanics. You're talking about storytelling, and that's kind of what I'm trying to say is that
I know what you're saying with that, but I'll say that the point still stands that it doesn't really matter what you do as long as it sort of just doesn't offend too many people. Seems to be the case with those freeform ones.
well, I mean, let's using our experience with the War Thread as an example, we had very few game mechanics to it. I mean, if we wanted to kill off a character, we had to get permission from the person who owned the character. Otherwise, everybody and their mother, including the GMs, would say, you know what, that post is null and void. Everybody ignore it. Moving on. But that was really the only game mechanic we had, other than, of course, me rigidly enforcing timeline, which I understand did get into a few people's craws. But for the most part, it was, if you want to create something, if you want to tell a particular story, if you want to do this action, there's nothing stopping you. Whereas, again, in JRPGs, you're very rigidly stuck with what the creators of the game say your character can and cannot do. You want, say, not Red Mage. Let's say you want to make Fighter from Final Fantasy 1 learn a black magic spell. Can't do it to get outside of the rules of the game. And the RPs that we do on Mayhem, if you want to have your fighter character go into using magic, you can very easily do that with very little objection from anybody else, unless, of course, suddenly he's casting what would be the rough equivalent to level 20 spells right off the bat. That would be, violating that slight bit of realism that is required for a role-playing game. And that's why I'm saying it's similar, more closely related to tabletop games, because even if there's no rule about, say, going from being a fighter to a magic user, then the games master will allow it if you jump through certain hoops, like making it an experience-based thing, or he's again not going to be casting level 20 spells right off the bat.
In short, just being creative and also logical at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's
is one way of putting it.
Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. I've never RP'd, so I really don't know.
Well, you going to get in war, I was going to say.
Yeah. I tried to get more, but it kind of died before I got in.
Yes.
And you partly sort of decided against going it before, it sort of died in actuality, because of, Troy was leaving. That was the point.
Yeah. Basically, he was the only reason I was going to join anyway. Because he was asking me to.
Yeah. Troy was... One thing about Troy was he was very successful at was recruiting people into the game itself.
He wasn't the only one that recruited, despite what he would sometimes say.
Well, I know that, but he did get a decent number of people in.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, you know what? I'm looking for Jake's postings of questions, and I don't see them. I was going to read one of his. Okay, let's do this. From You Will Never Know, who always comes up with some very creative questions.
And he does.
What is your favorite French fry style?
Style? Like curly fries or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Edible.
I just like the regular julienne fries. Those are just fine.
Well, my wife and I discovered, and I have no idea if these are really Australian, but they were calling them Australian fries at the county fair that we went to, that these were at. And basically they're like, not quite potato wedges, but like you take a slice out of a potato, and it's a really good hunk and thick slice. And I think you bake it until it's at least somewhat firm and crisp. And then you smother it in cheese.
Nice.
It's Heart Attack City, but it's delicious.
Cheese? Not really never heard it really done with cheese, but yeah, baking it. Yeah. Add spices.
So maybe it's like the American taco.
It seems to be that Americans add cheese to practically everything.
I'll add cheese to cheese.
Oh, I'm going to have a heart attack when I go over there. I'm going to have a heart attack on top of my heart attack.
Oh
Yes.
Got to get you to try one of the BK stackers at Burger King.
Oh, those are great. I love those.
It's the quad stacker is.
My ABS is going to hate me, especially because I have dairy allergies.
There's meat, cheese, and a little bit of sauce, and of course it's wrapped up in a bun.
Yes. With some bacon.
Heart attack city.
Yes, makes me think
Followed
of.
by Deftel.
Oh yes, I almost forgot about the bacon. Thank you, Karya.
Yes.
It makes me think of that Jack in the Box commercial a couple years back. This is our new meat and cheese burger. It's, as you can see, it's made from a quarter pound of beef and real cheese. And so, what do you think? Well, we like the meat and we like the cheese. Can we do something about the bun? And of course, Jack storms in at that point. Without the bun, the meat and cheese get all over your hand. And all these guys are all, okay, we'll work on it.
Actually, you just made me think, a slight tangent, but you just made me think of a little controversy I had to deal with the other night with people from the watch.
Tangent.
Is it Burger King, that's it. In Australia, there's actually Burger King and also Hungry Jack's.
I think you were mentioning that at one point.
Yeah, they both are basically, they both sell the exact same foods, and they're basically the same company. The only difference is that it's Hungry Jack's in some areas and Burger King in other areas. And it's not state-based or anything like that. It's just sort of down to the areas. And the reason for that is the guy that had someone bought the rights to Burger King in the first place, but didn't bring the company out straight away. And there was another company called Burger King's already here and was sort of well established. I think they actually were owned by the actual Burger King. So when the guy tried to bring out Burger King, a little bit of a fight between the two, and he just went over who owned the name. And then in the end, he just went, well, I'm just going to call it Hungry Jack's. So that's how that little name came about. I'm just saying because I know some Americans are a bit, they can't do that, that's just wrong.
Okay, we do have to bring this to a close. Oh my god, a short Bunnycast! It's less than 2 hours long! Stop the presses! Okay, so we're going to skip webcomic reviews. We'll get to that.
Because I haven't reading it. Haven't finished reading it.
So we'll get to that next week. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our sponsor for the hosting of the show, Shastrix.com. Again, anybody who heard last week's episode will have heard Jim of Shastrix. They are very nice, and they are open to picking up any comics or drawing projects that you want to host on a website. In terms of project recap, Squato, you working on anything?
So I'm just sort of laughing because I found a note to myself from before, and that was a minor point with the the torch relay and how the Chinese want to bring troops into Australia to help protect the torch. The joke being from one comedian was, it's just like that was exactly the same excuse Japan did in the 40s.
Okay.
As to project-wise, nothing major, but I might be away in the next few weeks because I've got to get an operation done.
Fine.
Yep.
We'll save the details for private discussion if anybody's interested. Kairio, projects.
It's going to be fun. That's all I'm going to know. What you just guys here.
Well, as far as projects go, I suppose, like webcomic that I sort of almost never update, Infernal Profile. I've started trying to update it again, but I found that I really can't find the time to draw anymore with school and stuff. So I'm just scripting that until the semester's over. But in my spare time, I do have time to sketch, which is why I started another comic known as Charcoal, which follows the story of some kid who gets turned into a Charmander. And
I can't wait till he turns into Chameleon.
Well, I'm not sure if that'll happen yet, but honestly, the way the story goes is, the way the process is, I just start with a concept, plunk in a bunch of characters, and see what happens.
I think someone made the point, just a line of point about the evolution is, if he did actually evolve, it's him sort of giving into that side of himself.
Oh yes, I did say that.
He wanted to be a freak.
Honestly, hey, embrace your freakiness. I'm actually.
Says the person. Yeah, so go.
Yeah,
stop it.
So, says the person. Yeah, I get your point. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what you do with that. That honestly looks more interesting than most of the stuff that I've seen lately. In terms of my own projects, right now I'm projectless for reasons I will describe at another point, possibly next week. But let's talk about Laguna Shy. Read it.
Lately? Like today?
Yes.
Go read it.
We're going to put you in the chair.
You're going to read it.
Yes, I have read it.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we got to wrap this up. Any last thoughts, guys?
Where would the world be without the where would we be without the agitators of the world touching the electrodes of knowledge to the nipples of ignorance? Your final thoughts for the day.
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
There's more than meets the eye. The laws of right and wrong no longer apply. It's a crazy world. In a twisted turn of reality, it's you and me. And I need you here to keep some sanity. We are but pawns in a faded game of cat and mouse. Maybe a couple of squirrels thrown out here and there. It's a crazy world, it's twisted all up in my hair. I got you, I don't care.
Bunnycast, produced and directed by Dame Helennet the LeatherClad, starring Dame Helennet the LeatherClad and Squato. Today also guest starring Kyrio. Laguna Shive is property of Dan Shive. All other properties referred to within the podcast itself are properties of their respective owners.
Feel alive when you're
Crazy World and Because of Your Grace are used without permission.
You make the rules apply. It's a crazy world. In a twisted turn of reality, it's you and me. And I need you here to keep some sanity. We are but pawns in a faded game of cat and mouse. Maybe a couple of headshots thrown out here and there. This crazy world is all messed up, all in my hair. I got you, I don't care. But now all that I want is just to be your man. It's a crazy world. In a twisted turn of reality, it's you and me. And I need you here to keep some sanity. We are but pawns in a faded game of cat and mouse. Maybe a couple of guinea pigs thrown out here and there. This crazy world is all messed up in my head. I got you, I don't care.